Irving Harold Krulovich was born in Racine, Wisconsin on March 31, 1921 to Alter and Rose Krulovich, who immigrated to the U.S. from Eastern Europe. He was the fourth of 5 children. Elmer was the oldest, then Edith, Walter, Irving, and Lester. The family lived above their grocery, called the confectionery store. There was an ice cream parlor in the store, and one of Alter's specialties was malted milk. He also claimed that he invented chocolate-coated ice cream on a stick, always a favorite of Irving's. As soon as the kids were tall enough to see over the counter, they helped out at the store. The children took turns leaving the dinner table to wait on customers and often did the homework on the store counter. Irving's paternal grandparents were Orthodox Jews. Irving once commented that his dad was a scholar of the Talmud and the Bible. Irving's parents spoke fluent Russian, Yiddish, and English. Alter helped with the store and kibitz with the customers, but Irving's mother, Rose, mostly ran it. On Friday nights and Saturdays, Irving's father went to shul, and on occasion he would ask the kids to go. Irving commented that, in those days, the kids respected their elders. They were asked to go, and so they went. Families in the neighborhood were from every ethnic group. The Kruloviches, however, were the only Jewish family. Irving's friends were Italian, German, Scandinavian, and Czech, and he kept the same friends through high school. Because their parents were busy with the store, the Krulovich kids didn't have much supervision. Irving's older sister Edith frequently took care of him as a child. She watched Irving and their younger brother Lester to make sure they didn't get into any mischief. In summer, the kids would go to the beach and play there much of the day, only going home to help in the store and to eat. The Krulovich kids made their own money, and their parents let them spend it as they saw fit. As a boy, Irving had a paper route passed down from his oldest brother, Elmer. In later years, Irving's excuse for leaning at the dinner table was that his heavy newspaper sack had hung from that side. Irving's mother, Rose, was an excellent cook and baker. On Friday nights, she prepared the house for the Seder. She cooked the challah bread and served gefilte fish first as an appetizer, then she served the main meal of pot roast or chicken. And she always prepared desserts, lemon meringue pies, apple strudel, or strawberry shortcake. Irving's wife Susanna remembered that she once tried Rose's cabbage soup recipe, but he complained it never tasted quite like his mom's. According to his sister Edith, Irving was their mother's favorite child. She would stand behind him while he ate a little snack of strawberry shortcake and fresh-baked challah. After high school, Irving moved to Madison to attend the University of Wisconsin, where he majored in agriculture bacteriology. During their leisure time, Irving and his friend Jerry played a lot of ping pong and became quite proficient at it. He continued to live in Racine during the hot, humid summers to work for his brother Elmer, who managed a retail and wholesale market. One summer, when the war was starting, the military built an airfield in Madison, and Irving stayed on to help the plumbers and carpenters. Irving wanted to finish college before joining the war effort, but was drafted into the Army with only 1 semester left before graduating. He reported for duty and was sent to an Army specialized training program in Camp Fannin, Texas. After basic training, Irving chose to enter the Army Air Corps and was sent to Kessler Field, Mississippi, where he was accepted into a pilot training program. He began basic flight training in a Piper Cub, but the Battle of the Bulge cut his training short. The Germans had penetrated the front lines of the Allied forces in France, and the U.S. Army needed additional recruits in Europe to counter the attack. Irving remembered celebrating New Year's in Times Square, New York, before boarding a victory ship headed for France. Because they used welding for the first time to build these ships, some cracked in half, while torpedoes fired from German submarines sank others. The ships were crowded, with enlisted men stacked 6 high in hammocks. The seas were often very rough, and they had to take evasive action to avoid German submarines. As a result, there were many sick and miserable men aboard the ship. After countless days at sea, they landed at Le Havre, a major port in France, and were assigned to the 69th Infantry Division, put on trucks, and routed through the southern part of France, through Germany and into Austria. More than 60 years later, Irving revisited Normandy, France, with his family and recounted some of his wartime memories. As Irving's squadron traveled through Europe, they would stop, form groups, and go through deserted towns to see if there were any German stragglers. Irving's platoon sergeant was killed while standing right next to him. The sniper targeted the sergeant because of his superior rank. Irving was a private first class and was a barman, carrying a Browning automatic rifle. It was a big gun and required 3 men to carry along with a tripod and ammunition. Firing the Browning was a dangerous position because the enemy would try to take it out. Irving commented that he didn't think he ever killed anybody, but he shot that gun like hell when going into towns while they were under artillery fire. On occasion, their caravan was attacked on their way and they would bail out and take their positions. The enemy sometimes shelled them with phosphor bombs, which can cause very serious burns, and Irving later commented, "You didn't want to get hit by one of those." When the division reached the Enns River in Austria, there was a German battalion of about 300 men across the riverbank. They settled in and waited for further instructions from headquarters. Irving noted that it was all quiet, which was unusual because it was typically very loud. But it was June 1945, and the war had ended. Over the next few days, many Germans came out of the forest with their hands over their heads, and at first, they were not sure what to do with them. While in Linz, Irving was granted a leave of absence and upon request was allowed to go to a university in Germany. He went as a student but wound up as an assistant to a professor from Brown University who was teaching bacteriology to American soldiers. He also traveled through Switzerland with other soldiers and visited Lucerne, Lausanne, and Vevey. Irving remembered that he met a very nice girl in Vevey who showed him around. After Germany's surrender, Irving was concerned that they would be shipped over to the Pacific Theater in Asia, but luckily, he was sent home. Irving had 2 years of service and recalled that some of those with less service went to the Pacific. He went back to the States via New York and again celebrated New Year's in Times Square. After being discharged, he headed home and made arrangements to finish up at Wisconsin. Recalling his arrival home, Irving said, "Ma gave me a big hug and a big kiss." Irving's brother Elmer was the first of the Kruloviches to move to California. After graduating from the University of Wisconsin and on Elmer's recommendation, Irving headed west. He applied to the University of California, Berkeley under the GI Bill. Irving heard of Berkeley through his brother Lester, who was already attending the university. The government took care of everything, giving him a stipend of $32 a month, which covered books and accommodations. Irving commented, "The GI Bill was one of the best things that came out of World War II. He graduated with a master's degree from the College of Natural Sciences. Soon after, Irving had a very helpful mentor, Reese Vaughn, who held a PhD in wine and winemaking. Reese was chairman of the Agricultural College and was instrumental in promoting the wine industry in California." Near the later part of his master's studies, Irving met Sarah Rayer, his first girlfriend and wife. He would hitchhike from Berkeley to San Francisco to see Sarah. He commented that San Francisco is far from Berkeley, but not as far as Texas. When asked to comment on what brought these two together, Irving said, "Sarah was a pretty girl and I was a young guy." After getting married, the couple rented an apartment in Berkeley. Sharon and Fern were born in the early 50s. At that time, the family had moved to the suburbs and lived in Broadmoor Village near Daly City, then moved to San Carlos. Irving noted that San Carlos was a nice city, and at the time, it was the last city on Highway 101 that had an overpass. Irving took a train and bus to work in San Francisco every day. He worked an 8-hour day before returning home to Sarah, Sharon, Fern, and Bruce, Sarah's boy from a previous marriage. Sharon recalled, "Dad would take Fern and me out every Saturday. We often went to the Carousel in Tilden Park, or the San Francisco Zoo, or to museums. Sometimes we would visit the grandparents in Petaluma. Dad was always careful to wipe the stovetop clean for Grandmother Rose. It was a long drive from Berkeley. We would buy ice cream sandwiches on the ferry between Richmond and San Rafael. He took us to botanical gardens in Berkeley and San Francisco. He liked lunch at Ghirardelli Square." Irving's first job after graduation was with the 6th Army Medical Corps at Fort Baker, which was at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge on the north side. Irving performed microbiological work to assess the quality of milk, poultry, and other food products used by the 6th Army Corps. They also ran pregnancy tests using frogs. He added, "I don't think they use frogs anymore." He also ran chemical tests to ensure labeled ingredients met specifications. This was a nice place to work because employees could sit at the pier at lunchtime and watch the boats go by. After the 6th Army Medical Corps, Irving took a job with Curtis and Tompkins in the city on Front Street near California and rode the cable car to work. Irving met his good friends Al Martin and Frankie Sackerman at C&T. Al, who was a very good tennis player, sparked Irving's interest in the game. Al and Irving used to play in the city parks or as far south as San Mateo if it was foggy. They would play bridge during lunch and feast on frog legs. Irving recalled, "We used to get packages of frozen frog legs from Japan and test them for their net weight. We'd defrost them, weigh them, cook them right up at work, and have a great lunch." When asked for a few words about Irving, Al wrote, "As for your dad, well, he is the most generous person I have ever had the pleasure to be associated with, and a true friend." Irving and Sarah eventually divorced, and Irving moved in with his brother Lester in El Cerrito for a bit, then went to San Francisco and stayed at the Chateau Bleu, a co-ed guest house, where his friend Al also resided. Irving had his own room, and they served breakfast and dinner every day. Irving met Susanna Sanger in the Chateau Bleu dining room. Susanna lived in a Chateau Bleu mansion on Jackson Street at Gough. Lenny Moberg, a friend at the Chateau, once organized a skiing trip for a group of friends. Irving had never been skiing before. They packed 6 people into Lenny's car, which was built for 5 and didn't have a heater, and headed to the slopes. Irving said that this probably didn't hurt in getting to know Susanna a little better. Irving proposed to Susanna at her apartment, asking, "If you don't mind the last name of Krulovich, would you like to get married?" They were married shortly thereafter on September 2nd, 1960, in Rabbi Rinder's parlor in San Francisco. It was a small ceremony with Susanna, Irving, Irving's immediate family, Susanna's friends, Suzanne Collin, and Swem Wohlert. The wedding ceremony was followed by a luncheon at the Altamira Hotel in Sausalito. That evening, Sven threw a pretty wild party in his North Beach apartment. Sven and his friends, Herb Kosovitz, and his architect buddies, and Susanna and Irving used to have great parties at the beach. They would build a big bonfire and eat potluck style. Irving mentioned that this was more than a little bit of a bohemian crowd, and Susanna and Irving were conservative bohemians. When asked about Irving, Susanna recalled, "He's a kind, gentle person, well-adjusted and happy, great sense of humor, can be stubborn. When someone did or said something quite outrageous, Irving would say, 'Oh, they're just kidding.' Before he met me, he never voted, drank, or gambled. He does all 3 quite well now. Irving thinks that a malted milk can cure anything. He's content in his own company and does not have a need for much social contact. However, he's always willing to participate and always has a good time. He's also non-judgmental, and as far as we know, has never made an enemy in his life. He's very loyal and loves his family. He'll do anything for family or friend if you ask him. He enjoys traveling and is an excellent travel companion. He enjoys the food and all activities, but is especially happy if there's a bridge group, as well as a casino." After their wedding, Susanna and Irving moved into an apartment in San Mateo when Irving took a new, better-paying job with Barnes-Heine Pharmaceuticals on Kiefer Road in Sunnyvale. Irving was hired to start up their quality control lab. While working for Barnes-Heine, Irving traveled frequently to Canada and Puerto Rico to visit Barnes-Heine facilities. Irving worked at Barnes-Heine for 30 years. In 1963, Susanna and Irving were expecting their first baby and moved to 440 Harrington Court in Los Altos. Tom was born in October of that year, and Peter followed a little more than 2 years later. Irving recalled taking Tom and Peter to the zoo and teaching the boys how to ski and play tennis. Peter remembers his father as being extraordinarily patient, hitting tennis balls to his sons and watching them play matches. To teach us how to ski, he would carry us up a small hill over and over again. We would shout, "Look out below," ski to the bottom, and wait for Dad to carry us up to the top again. He would often sit on a bench in the backyard, thinking to himself, or sometimes read a book. He never complained about anything, ever, and was entirely non-confrontational. He loved Eskimo pies, which reminded him of his childhood, and candy and nuts of all kinds. Tom also recalled hitting tennis balls with his dad after dinner on the driveway as dusk settled in. He remembered Irving spending long hours in the garden in his blue jeans and favorite orange and brown striped shirt. He was always up on his orchard ladder picking fresh apricots or digging a hole in the ground for the rotten ones. He also built a legacy by planting redwood trees. Every time someone in the family moved into a new home, Irving planted 3 redwood trees for them. He said that redwood trees like to grow in families, and they look good in a cluster. After retiring from Barnes Hind, Irving had fun skiing, vacationing in Mexico, and recalled the good times at Foothills Tennis and Swimming Club. He enjoyed reading, playing duplicate bridge, and traveling extensively with Susanna and his family. Although Irving did not often express his feelings with words, the love and pride he had for his family were evident. He took great pleasure in the celebrations and life events of his 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. He was a quiet but emotional man who often cried at bar mitzvahs, graduations, and recitals. Irving's sister Edith described her brother as a gentle soul, kind and understanding, always helpful. And his brother Walter said he was gentle and compassionate, always loyal and protective. Similar words were used to describe Irving by many other friends and family members. And this is how we will remember him.
Yo voy caminando a la montaña donde nací. Yo voy caminando a la montaña donde nací. No puedo vivir la noche del camino, al del cielo yo miraba una estrella. No puedo vivir al camino, que no vivo para ser tiempo. Yo voy caminando a la montaña donde nací. Yo voy